Graffiti might seem like a modern invention, but in the remains of the Mayan city of Tikal, pictures of jaguars, snakes, and deities can be found scratched onto buildings. The archaeological sites at Herculaneum and Pompeii feature graffitied word games, grocery lists, and animal drawings. And just like I may or may not have written "Sarah was here" on my locker in high school, this guy named Pakatus commemorated his visit to Pompeii by signing an amphitheater column. It goes to show that the desire to create art in public spaces, regardless of permission, is nothing new. And you probably don't have to go far to find some in your own community. But what drives us to create less than legal art? And what do we learn when we pay closer attention to it? Hi, I'm Sarah Urist Green, and this is Crash Course Art History. In our last episode, we talked about official public art, work that's formally approved to be made in public spaces. It often involves permits, funding, and specific rules about size, content, and so on. Independent public art, on the other hand, is a bit less sanctioned. Check out this mural of a sea snake by David Pignon, who goes by the name Seher 1. It's a beautiful public mural that reflects Mexican history and culture. But no one paid him to create it on the side of this building. I mean, I would. This is way better than a sad blank wall. Javier Abarca, the scholar who coined the term independent public art, argues that the unregulated nature of the form inherently resists the status quo. For example, while a commissioned mural may be painted on the side of a single building, an independent artist might create a work that stretches across multiple properties, as if to say, boundaries schmoundaries. The more recent incarnation of this type of art began in the late 1960s, when artists in cities like New York and Philadelphia began spray painting their names or tags onto buildings. This mostly text-based graffiti gave way to an exploration of new styles and techniques in the 70s, as artists covered subways with large-scale works. That branched into the development of street art, a more open-ended, image-heavy form of independent public art. Now, to create art on public property without permission is technically illegal, which is why, when you think about graffiti and street artists, you might imagine them working in secret, ready to make a quick escape. And this struggle between vandalism laws on one hand and the age-old human desire to represent ourselves in public on the other, it leads to a quality that most independent public art shares: impermanence. Artists create in public knowing full well that their work can get taken down or covered up by authorities the very next day. They also know that their art can change with added contributions from other community members. And for many artists, the impermanence is the point. They want their art to grow and evolve with the community. Like with this installation, Chalk, by Jennifer Alora and Guillermo Calzadilla. The pair bring human-sized chalk pieces on tour around the world. In each location, they invite locals to create marks on the streets and walls. The work is collaborative, bringing people together at a specific place and moment in time to make their mark. The art is found less in the chalk scribbles themselves than in the active community creation. The fleeting nature of independent public art allows for works that are innovative, interactive, and just plain fun, like Joshua Allen Harris's Inflatables. These sculptures made of plastic bags are tied to city subway grates, a space that's often overlooked, even avoided. The bags blend in like trash until a train passes below, spitting exhaust into the air. Then the sculptures come to life as a polar bear or a centaur, surprising the viewer before deflating again. But independent public art can also communicate far more serious points and give voice to political movements. Although much of this work is considered vandalism at the start, public opinion of it can shift over time. For example, art illegally painted on the west side of the Berlin Wall during the Cold War now lives in museums and public spaces around the world. The East Side Gallery in Berlin, which displays more than 100 of the wall's original murals, is visited by more than 3 million people each year. For a more contemporary example, consider this mural, made in Minneapolis, near where George Floyd was murdered by police in May 2020. The painting shows a portrait of Floyd within a sunflower, which one of the artists, Cadex Herrera, described as a symbol of life, longevity, and the Black Lives Matter movement. On either side of Floyd's head are enormous letters that spell out his name. They radiate outward, as if he's calling out to viewers. Inside the black, halo-like flower that surrounds his head are the words, "Say our names," with an extensive list of victims of racialized violence. The painting was designed by Herrera, Greta McLean, and Zena Goldman, but completed by the Minneapolis community, who contributed to the mural to show their support of the Black Lives Matter movement. The mural also became a site of public mourning, with visitors leaving flowers, notes, and other tributes. And this is just one example of many independent public artworks created in response to Floyd's death, not only in Minneapolis, but all around the globe. The Urban Art Mapping Project, out of the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota, has digitally cataloged these artworks, allowing what might have been impermanent to be documented for generations. This archive records a historical moment and also helps us better understand the present. For example, scholars who studied the collection found striking differences in street art made closer to intense protests rather than farther away. Artists near protests tended to make work that was more raw and direct, while the farther out they went, the more art focused on broader ideals like change or unity. So, by preserving artwork made independently, and not just work that was formally approved, we can gain a richer understanding of both history and the current moment. But when independent public art ends up in museums, galleries, and digital collections, it blurs those divisions we set up at the beginning of this video. Suddenly, something that started as rebellion has been welcomed into the mainstream. Perhaps no one understood that journey better than American artist Jean-Michel Basquiat. In the late 1970s, when Basquiat was about 17, he burst onto the street art scene, spray painting buildings with the tag SAMO to critique the commercial art world. The tag's pronounced SAMO, a shorthand for same old But that gallery and fine art world, they loved him. By his early 20s, he'd become a huge celebrity. Still, as he began to paint on stretched canvases and show in galleries, his work continued to reflect his origin as a street artist. Like in this piece, Horn Players, an homage to jazz musicians Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, Basquiat uses elements of street art, like outlined figures, handwritten and crossed out words. But he also takes inspiration from more traditional art forms and widely renowned artists. For example, Horn Players is a triptych, a 3-part format common in European religious art, like 15th century altarpieces. And the figures themselves echo those in Picasso's famous work, Three Musicians. In a single work, Basquiat brings together a centuries-long artistic tradition, modern Black musicians pushing the limits of jazz, abstract art of the early 20th century, and street art, which challenges the status quo by its very existence. And that, my friends, is how you enter my personal canon of significant artists. Cue the canon. So Basquiat, perhaps better than anyone, encompasses the many contradictions of independent public art today. His work began as a rebellion and a conversation with the public about pop culture and its many issues. It was often fleeting, getting removed by authorities or painted over by other artists. And yet, Basquiat's art managed to speak to people in the streets and the art world. And so does independent public art today. We see it in museums, digital archives, and even mainstream music. And of course, all around us. And it teaches us things about history and the present. Independent public art might not be legal, but that doesn't mean it's not important. It's an integral part of the communities it emerges from, and of the broader human story. Sometimes it brings color and life into a forgotten part of the city. Other times, it provides a voice to a political movement or inspires global activism. In any case, people in the mainstream art world and beyond are increasingly paying attention to this diverse art form that has the power to change our world. Next time, we'll be unpacking the complex debate around originality in art. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching this episode of Crash Course Art History. which was filmed at the Indianapolis Museum of Art at Newfields, and was made with the help of all of these mostly law-abiding people. If you want to help keep Crash Course free for everyone forever, you can join our community on Patreon.